said, let us get into this pay-per-view. UFC 281, Adesanya versus Pereira. Israel, the last stylebender, defending his UFC middleweight belt against Alex Pereira out of Brazil, the kickboxing phenom who has 2 wins over Izzy in the kickboxing world, the last one being by knockout as recent as 2017, man. UFC 281 going down this Saturday, November 12th at Madison Square Garden in New York, New York. Oh, baby, the bright lights for Mr. Stylebender, who is one of the UFC's brightest stars, if not the at the moment. Let's work our way up this card. We're going to, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk about all of the fights on this star-studded pay-per-view. So here we go. Opening the card, UFC 281, in the light heavyweight division, Carlos Ulberg takes on Nicolae Negumereanu. We have Ulberg, the 31-year-old out of New Zealand. The Kiwi is 6'4". As a pro, he has 6 wins, 1 defeat. 4 of those wins have come by way of knockout. Most recently, he got the win over Tafon Nchukwi. Yes. Then we have Negumereanu, the 28-year-old out of Romania, coming into this Saturday with a 4-fight win streak. Mark, why don't you talk about this fight and give us your pick, my friend?
So we kick things off with a close competitive fight right out of the gate. The betting odds agree. Minus 130 for Ulberg, plus 110 for Negumereanu, so very tight. This is a close fight. I could see it going either way. Ulberg is 4 inches taller, but he's actually going to be at a 1-inch reach disadvantage, so kind of quirky difference there. Style-wise, Negumereanu, I'm sure will try to keep it in close, in boxing range, in clinch range, takedown range, whereas Carlos Ulberg will try to keep that space and operate in the kickboxing range. Negumereanu has found a really functional game lately that I think people kind of still underrate, maybe even including me right now. But I'm leaning Carlos Ulberg for a couple reasons. One is that Ulberg was working Kennedy Nzechukwu in his debut before he gassed out and got finished, whereas Negumereanu obviously beat Nzechukwu, whereas Ulberg did not, but he was in a close fight with him the whole way. So if we look past Ulberg gassing the way he did in his debut, I actually think the talent level looked more impressive from Ulberg. And on top of that, I think he's figured some things out since. I think he's got a better feel for his game. I think he's got a better feel for his cardio. He has looked better in there. And I think talent-wise, if the cardio's in check, he's the pick. So I think he can snipe his way to a win, maybe even a finish. If it goes to a third, I do wonder a little bit if we see the cardio issues pop back up, because Negumereanu does keep a pace. So I'll actually say it doesn't. I'll say it doesn't. I'll say Carlos Ulberg becomes the first person to knock out Negumereanu, round 2 KO.
Let's go. Omar, give us your impressions and your take of Ulberg versus Negumereanu.
Negumereanu is a tank. And I think that's really the biggest problem is, he's a guy that gets hit but doesn't seemingly go away. Just like Mark was saying, that Kennedy and Nzechukwu fight is the one to kind of look at, because they both fought this guy and they both have very different stories as to how that fight went. Mark kind of went through it. I'm not going to go through it again. But one thing I do take away from it is that Nicolae is a tank. He's very, very difficult to put away. I think this will be the more difficult fight, the most difficult fight that Ulberg has had up until this point. I think especially because of how tough Nicolae is. The thing I am concerned about is him gassing again, specifically because of how many shots I think he's going to need to string together in order to be able to put Nicolae out. And if he doesn't, my concern is that he's going to blow his wad doing it. With those concerns in mind, I don't think that Nicolae has as much to offer Ulberg as Ulberg does against Nicolae. And so with that in mind, I will also be taking Ulberg by 2nd round KO.
That's what I said.
We are unanimous, gentlemen. I'm also taking Carlos Ulberg, although given the tank nature of the Romanian, who has never been finished in any way. I'm going to say that Ulberg is going to win a decisive UD. I think Negumereanu is going to run into the talents of Carlos Ulberg and the physique. My God, man, this guy, he's way up there now in best physiques in the promotion. The guy looks like he could be Dwayne Johnson's cousin or something like that. My God.
Yeah. Paulo Costa, who?
Yeah, right? Let's go. Okay, in the bantamweight division, Julio Arce takes on Montel Jackson. Arce from Queens, New York, baby, 33 years old. He's 18-5 as a pro. 5 knockouts, 5 subs, 8 decisions. Well-rounded guy coming off of a win over Daniel Gustavo Santos. In the other corner, Montel Jackson, nicknamed Quick with just a K, from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. 30 years old, 11-2 as a pro, coming off of back-to-back wins. What else to say about this guy? That's about it. Okay. He's never been finished. That's noteworthy. Omar, give us your take and your pick.
I like Julio Arce. Big fan, from Queens, obviously. So as a New York City native, he's just been my boy since he stepped on the scene after the Contender Series. I don't know, however long ago now at this point. But the reality is, Arce has had kind of an up and down career. He'll win one, he'll lose one, he'll win one, he'll lose one. He's also one of these guys that needs to string together volume, needs to have movement in his game, needs to use his length if he has it if he has the advantage in that situation. But he's not one of these guys that's just going to like lay somebody the fuck out. He's very much a guy that needs to string a lot of things together. Montel Jackson, I would want to say, is very similar in that aspect. He's not like a one-hit KO kind of guy. He is another guy that has to rely on movement and putting strikes together in order to get where he needs to go. I think Arce at this point is probably better. I would hope. I am a little biased in this one because I do really like Arce. I do think he has the skills and what it takes to beat Montel. I was going to say Montel Jordan. This is not how we do it. So I'm going to go with Arce by unanimous decision.
Okay, Mark, give it to us.
All right, so Arce is the dog here. He's plus 170. Montel Jackson is minus 210. These guys are both very good. I, too, have always been a believer in the game of Julio Arce. Always been a fan of his. When I first thought about this fight, I was like, oh, Julio Arce could take this. The more I looked at it, I don't think I can pick him here. There seems to be a lot in the corner of Montel Jackson. He's going to get a striking match here for one. Arce's not taking him down. Jackson shines there. Jackson is the one who's better in the clinch and the wrestling. So if anything, he's the one who could mix it up if he needs to. He's 3 inches taller. He's got a 5.5-inch reach advantage, which is pretty huge. It just seems to be a lot in the corner of a fighter who is already very good and who prefers to strike, and that's the game he's going to get from Arce. So if you're taking Arce here, I think you have to expect his technique to be clearly a level above what Jackson's is. And I'm just not sure that is the case. And remember, Montel's a guy who's only lost in his career to Ricky Simone and Brett Johns. 2 big wrestling threats. When he gets to strike, he does pretty damn well. So I'm going to go with him here. I'll give Arce a round. I think it'll be competitive, but I'm going to say 29-28, Montel Jackson.
I'm going to go a step further than you, Mark. I think that Jackson is going to get Arce out of there, and he's going to hand him his second TKO loss of his career. I think the power differential is going to be with Jackson. Like you said, he's going to be a physically bigger guy in there unless there has been another shenanigans with measurements. Jackson listed at 5'10", Arce listed at 5'7". Imagine we see Julio Arce like tower over Montel Jackson. But no, I'm going to go with the guy who has more than half of his wins by knockout. I think he's going to hurt Julio Arce and get him out of there. I'm going to say 3rd round TKO for Montel Jackson. Quick with the K.
Come on, Julio.
All right,
you got to represent from New York, man. Nobody here believes in you, baby. I believe in you. Let's go, Julio.
Man. I lived in Queens briefly. I loved Queens, man. I lived in Astoria. Fucking great neighborhood, man. I miss it.
I
My
hate
wife is
going to
from
the
Queens,
city.
so
I hate going to the city from any of the other boroughs. It's a pain in the dick getting to Manhattan from anywhere else. Like, those train rides are ridiculous. The people on those train rides are ridiculous. It just, I could never have lived in any of the outer boroughs. Like, I loved living in Manhattan.
Dude, Astoria was a straight shot right into Midtown, bro.
yeah, I feel like Astoria's easy. I feel like most of Brooklyn is fairly easy too. Maybe not most, but parts.
Brooklyn's further. And
All
Brooklyn
I
feels
know
like
is
its
that
own country.
Those D trains, all those trains used to break down at all times, and you'd be stranded in a whole other fucking borough. I can't do it. I can't do it.
Okay, we're getting sidetracked. Okay, let's keep going. In the featherweight division, Mike Trizano takes on Seungwoo Choi. Trizano, the lone wolf, the 30-year-old out of New Jersey, baby. 9-3 as a pro, 2 knockouts, 2 subs, 5 decisions. He's coming off of back-to-back losses, looking to get back into the win column. Seungwoo Choi Sting is his nickname, the 30-year-old out of Seoul, South Korea, 10-5 as a pro, with 6 knockouts, no submissions, 4 decisions. Also, coming into the Saturday night, looking to get back in the win column after back-to-back losses. Mark, give us your thoughts on this matchup between Trizano and Choi, both looking to get back into the win column.
I was trying to look up, but it didn't come up easy. I was trying to look up when that Seoul card was that Omar mentioned. I was wondering if they could turn around Seungwoo Choi in time.
February 4th.
Oh, so they definitely could. Okay, this one. Mike Trizano is the dog, plus 135. Seungwoo Choi is minus 165. I have never believed that Mike Trizano is more than a lower tier UFC featherweight. And I don't think that changes here. I think Choi throws with too much power, too much ferocity, too much pace. And I just don't think Mike Trizano has the game to turn him back. Plus, it's a 3.5 inch reach advantage for Choi. I just think he's going to be on Mike Trizano in a way that Trizano is not equipped to stop. So I could see a finish for Choi. I will give Trizano the credit to see the bell, but I'm going to say it's a clear decision win for Seungwoo Choi.
Okay, Omar, give it to us. Trizano versus Choi. What's your take?
I think the reason I'm personally having trouble picking this fight is because I'm not super stoked on either one of these guys, if we're being perfectly honest. I've enjoyed Woo Choi's fights, I think, more than Trizano's. I will also say Woo Choi has a fantastic, lengthy cross that he throws really, really well and stays out of danger when he throws that cross. And I think that's where all of his power really comes from, is that punch. But as far as overall game is concerned, I'm not super sold on both of them. And I think that's why I'm having a big problem trying to figure out which way I want to lean. I'm going to go with the guy that I've enjoyed more. I'm going to go with the guy that I've seen crisper technique from. So for that, I'm going to go with Seungwoo Choi. I don't know how much either one's going to get done, so I'm going to go with Seungwoo Choi by decision.
Guys, bad news. Nick's lost, so fuck that.
Yeah, they got
against the
fucking
Nets.
obliterated.
I agree with Mark. I think Mark said it better than I could. While I thought it was cool to see a New Jersey guy in there in the featherweight division in Michael Trizano, I've never been super impressed by his skill set. And I agree. I think Choi's going to have a huge power differential, and he's going to sting Trizano, and I think he's going to get him out of there in the second round. I'm going to take Choi by knockout or TKO and midway through round number 2. That's the take.
Like it.
All right, things are only getting better from here, gentlemen. In the women's strawweight division, Karolina Kowalkiewicz. Why do I give all the Polish?
I always forget that's coming.
Why do I give all the Polish women this accent, man? There's something
The
about
little
them,
Nona
man.
accent, this like grandma accent.
It kills me every time.
Grandma, man. I think I'm going sultry, bro.
Coming up next on the card, Karolina Kowalkiewicz.
No, man.
Yeah, I'm with you, Mike. I think it's a sultry voice.
I think it's all like raspy and like
It's
smoky.
like if you're trying to seduce a 90-year-old woman, maybe, I guess. I don't know what sultry voice
like
that
an
is.
internet pop-up to
I
like.
can't help it, bro. Can't help it. Okay. Kowalkiewicz, the talented striker out of Poland, 37 years old, 13-7 as a pro. coming off of a win against Felice Herrig, which snapped a 5-fight losing streak for her. Taking on Silvana Gomez Juarez, the 37-year-old out of Argentina, 11-4 as a professional with 7 knockouts to her name, coming off of a win over Na Liang at UFC 275 to share versus Prohaska back in June of this year, which she got by KO. Omar, give us your take of this interesting fight between Kowalkiewicz and Juarez.
This is another fight that's really difficult to pick because I probably wouldn't pick Gomez Juarez in almost any other situation, to be really honest. And Karolina had a great performance in her last fight against Felice Herrig, but Felice Herrig was also kind of on her way out. So it's difficult to know how much to really take away from that fight, considering Karolina's been getting fucking washed by everybody else before that. She was, before the Felice Herrig fight, the woman had won since 2018. So there's a lot that goes into that. How many changes she probably had to make in her camp, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know what there is in this fight now against somebody who's not on their way out, right? And again, to be fair, Gomez Juarez isn't somebody who's a world beater. She's not like she's got all these wins under her belt. She's not gotten a crazy run in the UFC. In fact, her last fight was the first time that she won in the UFC. Her first 2 performances in the UFC were losses, and she got kind of worked on the ground. It's a little difficult to know which way to really turn here because I wouldn't pick any one of them on a regular basis against anybody else. And so I've gotten 2 fighters here that I have to pick one when I don't want to pick either one of them. So I guess I'm going to go with Gomez Juarez. I can't really tell you why. I'm going to go with Gomez Juarez by unanimous decision.
Okay. Mark?
I flipped the coin in my head.
Sure.
The odds are as tight as Omar's coin flip would indicate. They're both, neither is plus money, I should say. Karolina is minus 115.
Oh, wow.
And Silvana is minus 105. So nearly pick 'em fight. I see this one as an absolute 2 outcomes fight. It's either Karolina by submission or Silvana by knockout. Silvana looks lost on the ground thus far, and Karolina can get it there. And if she does, I imagine it won't last long. Silvana's only 1-2 in the UFC thus far. As Omar said, she literally put herself into an armbar from Vanessa Demopoulos in a fight where she was winning, which was not a great look. But this is going to start on the feet. And as much as Kowalkiewicz won her last fight, I just don't think I trust her to not get rocked, because for all of Silvana Gomez Juarez's faults on the mat that she has shown thus far, she has some hands. And Karolina isn't exactly a dominant takedown artist. She may need a couple attempts to get it there. So as much as I think if she does get it there, she could easily win, I just think it might take a couple attempts. And I think in that time, Silvana Gomez Juarez finds the chin in one of the early exchanges and puts Karolina down. So I will say Gomez Juarez, round 1, knockout.
I also want to add really quick. I don't know. I wonder about where Karolina's mindset is, because before the Felice Herrig fight, I know that she had been considering retirement, especially considering how the Felice Herrig fight went. If she's teetering on that choice, depending on how fights are going to go, I think that's going to play into the mental factor of a lot of these fights going forward. And like I said before, the Gomez Juarez is not on her way out. She's not even considering that's not where she is in her career. And so these mentalities are totally different. And Karolina's thinking about potentially getting, retirement and what's next, and all these other things are potentially going through her head when they shouldn't be. It could play into how this fight ends up going down. Just a thought I had.
We are unanimous, gentlemen. I'm taking Gomez Juarez. I'm not as bold as Mark. I'm not going to say by knockout. I'm going to be with Omar this time. I'm going to say that she dings Kowalkiewicz up and down this fight all around the octagon. I'm going to say she's going to sail to a clear unanimous decision victory by landing a lot of damage on Kowalkiewicz. But she's going to weather the storm. So there you have it. Okay, moving on. In the lightweight division, Matt the Steamroller Frevola takes on Ottman Azaitar. I'm sorry if I'm butchering that name. Out of Germany. Matt Frevola, the 32-year-old out of Huntington, New York, from Long Island. He's 9-3 as a pro with 1 draw, 2 knockouts, 3 subs, 4 decisions, coming off of a TKO victory. Ottman, like I said, out of Cologne, Germany, the 32-year-old, undefeated, 13-0 with 10 knockouts, 2 submissions, and just 1 victory coming by way of decision. He has not lost yet. He's undefeated in the UFC, 2-0 under the UFC banner. Mark, let me toss it over to you first this time. Give us your take and your pick over Frevola against Ottman Azaitar.
Another fight with tight odds. A lot of great matchups on this card. In this one, Ottman is favored. He's -125. Frevola is +105. This one for me comes down to the power of Ottman Azaitar, which is very real. He's 2-0 in the UFC, 2 KO TKOs, 13-0 overall, 10 across those fights. The man has big power. It's been ages since he fought. We know Frevola can wrestle, and he could certainly have a night where he manages to grind Azaitar out and out-grapple him to a victory. But Azaitar can wrestle some as well, and I just think he's going to be too strong to be controlled for too long. And additionally, Frevola often ends up in fights that kind of devolve into slugfests. He's very willing to kind of throw the game plan out the window at times and exchange, and I just think that comes back to bite him in this one because it's the wrong guy to do that with. I think it's a tough matchup for Frevola. I will say Ottman Azaitar by round 2 knockout.
Omar, your turn.
I'd have to agree. I think Ottman's hips are actually a lot better than people give him credit for. I think he's probably going to be very difficult to keep down if he does get taken down. I think if he defends enough of those takedowns, it's going to wear on Matt Frevola more than it's going to wear on Azaitar. And I do think that the power from Azaitar is going to play a big difference in how that fight ends up playing out. So I'm also going to go with Azaitar here, 2nd round KO.
I think it's a nice stepping stone for Azaitar taking on a UFC vet in Matt Frevola. But I think that this guy, the hype is real on him. 13-0, 10 knockouts. I can't see too deep down his record right now, but I know the last 5 fights have come by way of knockout for him. Both of his UFC fights so far, over his first opponent as well as his last opponent in combo, were the knockouts. I think he's going to keep rolling right over the steamroller. Nice. I think he's going to get Matt Frevola out of there. Another knockout or TKO. I'm going to say round 1 this time. He got knocked out in the first round by Terrence McKinney. I'm going to say he gets him out of there once again. Bear in mind, the last 3 fights for Azaitar have been round 1 knockouts. So the guy brings a ton of firepower at lightweight. So very excited for this fight. Let us march on now. In the middleweight division, Andre Petroski taking on Wellington Turman. Petroski, the 31-year-old out of New Jersey. He's 8-1 as a pro with 4 knockouts, 4 submissions, all finishes. In other words, no fights have been won by way of decision. Only 1 loss, which is a knockout, which was his last fight before he entered the UFC. It was in LFA. He lost by TKO in round number 2. He's undefeated under the UFC banner, 3-0 in the UFC. Most recently, defeating Nick Maximov back in May of this year. Wellington Turman across the cage, the 26-year-old out of Curitiba, Brazil. He is 18-5 as a pro with 4 knockouts, 8 submissions, and 6 decisions, bringing in back-to-back wins into this Saturday night. Okay, Omar, let me toss it over to you first this time. Give us your take and your pick for Petroski versus Turman.
A pretty interesting fight here stylistically. I'm actually I'm actually a little torn as to how I think this fight's going to go because Petroski has some really good wrestling. We've seen him in his last fight with Nick Maximoff. He showed some real dominance, although, yeah, I mean, I'm glad he did, frankly. But it's definitely the best performance I've seen from Petroski, but I've never really been a Petroski guy, personally. I have enjoyed Wellington Turman's performances. He's of the Teixeira team, so he fights out with Glover Teixeira and all those guys out of Connecticut, and so he's always interested me, kind of being one of the proteges of the former champ. And he had a great performance against Misha Shirkunov. That was fantastic, although Misha is now not even with the UFC anymore. So it is a little difficult to kind of narrow down exactly how this fight is going to go. But I do think Turman has more tools in the end to really give Petroski a run for his money, even if it does end up going down to the ground. So I'm going to go with Wellington Turman here. I don't think this goes to decision. Both of these guys are really scrappy. So I'm going to go with Wellington Turman by submission, 3rd round.
Okay, Mark, give it to us.
Okay, Petroski is favored. He's minus 205. Turman is the plus 165 underdog. As Omar said, Turman has some skills. He's got some real slick grappling. But I personally think this is a tough matchup for him. Petroski's the stronger man. He's the better pure wrestler. He may not be the better striker necessarily, but neither of them is great in that department, and Petroski will at least have the power on his side there. So I just think there's more in his corner. I think he can control this fight for the most part. I think he's good enough to stay safe when it hits the mat. I know we've seen before occasionally some issues with Petroski's cardio. He does seem to be past it. I could see it rear its head and him get caught in some type of scramble if he's a little lazy and tired in round 3, because Turman won't let you, he won't let you be lazy in there without him catching you. But I'm going to trust it because it has looked better lately, so I will say Petroski wins a decision in a fight where he kind of mixes it up with the wrestling and dictates where it goes.
It's a tough fight for me to pick. I think these guys are an interesting matchup for each other. I'm going to go with the guy who's just the more proven guy at this point, 18-5 as a pro. I'm going to go with Turman, and I'm going to say I'll say Turman by decision. I don't have a great read on this fight, to be honest. I want to say he's going to be hunting that submission, but Petroski's never been subbed, so I think it's going to be a tough fight for Turman to get him out of there. So I'll say Turman by decision. Okay, marching on now. In the women's flyweight division, very, very exciting fight between Erin Blanchfield and the very popular Molly McCann. So we have Blanchfield, cold-blooded, a 23-year-old out of Elmwood Park, New Jersey, trains partially over at MK Muay Thai. I know those guys well from the Muay Thai scene in New York. Blanchfield, the very talented striker. Again, it bears repeating, she's only 23 years old, and she is going to her 4th fight in the UFC. She is 9-1 as a pro overall, with 2 knockouts, 2 subs, and 5 decisions. 1 decision loss. She has never been finished. She's 3-0 in the UFC. I think I said that already. Most recently, submitting J.J. Aldrich back in June of this year. She will be standing across from the very popular fan favorite Molly Meatball McCann, the 32-year-old out of Liverpool, England. She's 13-4 as a pro, 6 knockouts, no submissions, 7 decisions, riding a 3-fight win streak coming into this weekend. Most recently, getting a TKO victory over Hannah Goldie. By the way, speaking of winning streaks, as a professional, Erin Blanchfield is riding a 6-fight win streak coming into this Saturday night. Omar, let me toss it over to you. Give us your take and your pick of McCann versus Blanchfield.
So I think Molly has, one would expect, the edge in the striking here, but Blanchfield is pretty decently well-rounded here. And and she's definitely a scrapper. We've seen her dominate Miranda Maverick. We've seen her in her last fight with JJ Aldrich where she had that guillotine choke. Molly's on a nice little tear though, and it's hard to think that this is the one that's going to derail her. She's got a lot of momentum now with those two finishes via spinning elbow. The Hannah Goldie one was like elbow plus more ass whooping afterwards. But Molly has been very electric, very exciting to watch. A very magnetic person to want to watch. But Blanchfield is no joke. And Blanchfield, I think at this point, is probably going to be one of the tougher tests of her career in recent memory. And I don't think this will be one of these spinning back fist or spinning elbow finishes that is just going to be super easy to get. I actually think this one's going to go all the way to decision if Blanchfield doesn't find some sort of opening before then. I think I'm going to go with Blanchfield here by decision. I'm having that feeling here. I'm interested to see what Mark has to say.
Okay, yeah, Mark.
All right, so the odds are quite wide. Erin Blanchfield, minus 420.
Wow.
Molly McCann, plus 320. I was never necessarily a Molly McCann believer. Now, as I am finally becoming one, she runs up against Erin Blanchfield. And I just don't see how I can pick Molly McCann. She has drastically improved. She has found a game that works for her that allows her to get her strikes off. But Erin Blanchfield is very good. And Erin Blanchfield can wrestle. And Erin Blanchfield can grapple. And as good as Molly has looked on the feet, I don't know that she can stop those things. I just see Molly being in trouble in the grappling department in this fight. And Erin has a 6-inch reach advantage, which is a nice thing to fall back on try to, kind of keep things at a safe range and only close that distance when you're ready to close it. So that helps too. So there may be moments for Molly Meatball. I do think the odds are very wide. If she's plus 320, I wonder what Molly by KO is with the way she's been finishing girls lately. That may be worth a small sprinkle just because of what kind of odds you're going to get. But I personally think the run ends here and that she gets ground out a bit, and people are a little bit like, oh, I wish I got to see a little more Molly striking, but she's just getting controlled all over the place. So I will say Erin Blanchfield, UD.
I think that there's probably a power differential in favor of Molly McCann. Hence her nickname. She's, I think, the more compact. They're listed at the same height, but she just seems like a more dense, women's flyweight. That being said, I think that the evidence is clear that Erin Blanchfield is going to be a more talented, more technical striker in there. And like you said, she's more well-rounded. She's also very good on the ground. And I see Erin Blanchfield not getting caught with any spinning shit. And I'm going to go Blanchfield by unanimous decision. I don't think she's going to get her out of there because Molly McCann is very durable. So there you have it. Yeah, I think Blanchfield keeps moving on. It's going to be getting better and better. And it's going to be getting juicy for Erin Blanchfield next year. It sucks for Molly McCann. It was a fun hype train. She got to be on the last two UFC London cards. And when she wins, and wins with spinning shit, she jumps on the cage and she's there with her hometown crowd, and it's amazing. It's quite a show.
She's saying she might have Drake there supporting her at MSG.
Wow.
Yo, I was just saying to myself, man, I wonder if Drake's about to bet on this fucking girl because he about to lose a ton of money on this girl.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, Drake.
I'll tell you what, I just looked it up. She's 12-1 odds, plus 1,200 to win by knockout. I would sprinkle that just in case. I might bet both ways. Erin to win straight and a little sprinkle on Molly by knockout.
All right, boys. It is getting better and better here, UFC 281. In the light heavyweight division, the return of Dominick, the Devastator Reyes, taking on Ryan Superman Spann. So we have Dominick Reyes making his return since his devastating knockout loss against Jerry Prohaska back in May of 2021. Reyes, the 32-year-old from California. He is 12-3 as a pro with 7 knockouts, 2 subs, and 3 decisions. He will be coming into this weekend looking to get back in the win column. The former title challenger has now lost 3 in a row. I mean, those 3 were against John Jones, Jan Blachowicz, and Yuri Prohaska. So he has faced some pretty stiff competition. He will be standing across from Ryan Superman Spann, the 31-year-old out of Texas, 20-7 as a professional with 5 knockouts, 12 submissions, 3 decisions, coming off of a win over Ion Cutelaba. Mark, give us your take and your pick of Spann versus Reyes.
All right, Reyes is favored here despite the long layoff. He's minus 215. Ryan Spann is plus 175. This is one of those fights we get every now and then on here where it's like, well, I don't know. One guy's been out so long that I don't even know how to evaluate it. And honestly, it's only been a year and a half, but God, it feels way longer for Dominick Reyes. I feel like we haven't seen him in ages. Yeah. And he's stepping back in against a guy who is a finisher. If nothing else, he can end things on the feet. He can end things on the mat. It's a dangerous first fight back to be taking. But on the other side of the coin for Ryan Spann, he can be hurt. He can be put down. We've seen it before, and Reyes is certainly capable of that. So, I don't know. I could really see this going either way. I could see the rust playing a factor and Dom just getting blitzed early with something. And Spann does have a 4.5-inch reach advantage, which is a little surprising to me. And a little bit yikes, which makes me want to think, wow, maybe he does catch Dom early if Dom's a little off. But I do think if Dom can survive the first 3 or so minutes, that the fight will start to swing his way, because I do think he's better. He's shown it in the past, and unless he's just not the same guy because of 2 knockouts, then there's no reason he shouldn't show it here. He's shown us great takedown defense. He's shown he can hang in high-paced fights, both things Spann may be looking to do. He's shown the ability to snipe guys, and Spann is vulnerable to being caught. I mean, the man arguably beat John Jones in a lot of people's minds. So until I am given more reason than I have been given to not trust Dominick Reyes, I feel like I got to go with him here. I will say Dom Reyes. I actually didn't think about how I want to say it. Now I'm debating. I will say Dom Reyes by UD.
Omar.
I like Ryan Spann, but I've always had problems with Ryan Spann. Like, even the last fight that he had with Ion Cutelaba, that submission win, there were moments before that happened where he was getting worked. He got taken down like 2 or 3 times before he actually ended up getting that submission. He just his fights are never clean, regardless of which way it goes. And Dominick Reyes, I just think, is one of those guys where you can't really play that game. If you give Dominick Reyes the opportunity to hurt you, he's going to take it. I think where the issue really lies is the recent losses of Dominick Reyes, I think, have exposed, one, that he can be hurt. It makes people question his chin. It makes people question his ability to still fight effectively, defend himself effectively. It brings up a lot of different questions, which is interesting considering Ryan Spann has also lost a handful of times as well. TKOs, submissions, and the like. But I don't feel like I have the same questions in that regard as I do with Dominick Reyes in his continuing career. I'm going to go with Ryan Spann here just because I like Ryan Spann. I like Dominick Reyes too, but his recent performances, regardless of the fact that he's gotten 3 losses against great fighters, have just not really been impressive to me. The John Jones fight, we can talk about how close that fight was, but the John Jones that fought that night would have gotten his ass beat against the John Jones from like 5 years prior. So I don't know. I mean, it's something to take away from it, I guess, that he was able to do that against John Jones in general, but I don't know. I'm still just not super sold on it. So I'm going to go with Ryan Spann. I think he can catch Dominick Reyes, and I think it happens early. I'm going to go with Ryan Spann by KO round 1.
Ooh. I do feel like the knockout that Dominick Reyes suffered at the hands of Yuri Prohaska is the kind of knockout where I'm not going to pick him until after he convinces me that he's okay. So I'm also going to take Ryan Spann by knockout. I'll say knockout also in round 1 with Omar.
Wow.
I mean, these are big boys,
wow.
man. These are big light heavyweights, and I think towards the end of round 1, I think Reyes is going to get clipped. I see him getting clipped, and Spann swarming and finishing him at the end of round 1. And it sucks because I liked Dom Reyes when he came up and he kind of hit the scene and he challenged for the belt. I was really excited for that fight against Jon Jones, and I mean, on the rewatch, there's an argument for Jon Jones in that decision, but I remember watching that fight and feeling like he won that fight and very excited for him. So we'll see, man.
I never liked Dominick Reyes, really, and I'm the one picking him here.
It's funny. Okay, let's move on. Let's keep on going because there are many, many more great fights for this card, UFC 281. All right, fun one in the lightweight division. Brad Riddell taking on Renato Moicano. Riddell, the 31-year-old out of New Zealand. He's 10-3 as a pro. Looking to get back in the win column with back-to-back losses, most recently over against Jalen Turner. Before that, against Rafael Fiziev. Moicano, fighting out of Brazil, obviously, 33 years old. He's 16-5 as a pro with 1 draw. Also looking to get back into the win column after dropping one against RDA. So, Omar, let me toss it over to you. Give us your take and your pick for Moicano against Riddell.
I'm a big Brad Riddell fan, man. I really got sold off of that Rafael Fiziev fight. I know he lost that fight, but that fight was tremendous. That was an absolute savage-ass fight that really came down to the last few moments of that of the fight in general, where Fiziev was able to time very well and pull off a spinning roundhouse kick, or spinning wheel kick, I should say, and catch Brad Riddell and finish him from that point on. But up until that point, it was a very competitive back-and-forth fight. The Jalen Turner loss, I thought, was more of him getting caught more than anything. I still think if they fought again, I would probably still be picking Brad Riddell to beat Jalen Turner. As good as Renato Moicano is, I think he's also had a string of bad luck. He's had some ups and downs. He's had some great performances as of late. I don't know if he changed camps recently or not in the last couple years, but he's had some really good performances of late. He just recently did lose to Rafael Dos Anjos, but he did have a fantastic performance against Alexander Hernandez and another one against Jai Herbert as well. I do think Brad Riddell, though, skill for skill, I think is a little bit better. Just about everywhere minus the ground. I do think Moicano probably possesses a little bit better jiu-jitsu overall. But I don't think he'll be able to hold Brad Riddell down or even implement that part of his game. I wouldn't imagine. So I think this is going to be a stand-up fight for the most part. So I'm going to go with Brad Riddell here. I think it'll be a back-and-forth fight up until a certain point. So I'm going to go with TKO round 3.
Okay, Mark, give it to us.
Another fight with super close odds. Renato Moicano favored minus 125. Brad Riddell even money plus 100. This is a really great matchup. Both these guys are so good. They're just in a stacked-ass division. But both guys also really need this win right now. So they're going to come out going for it. And this will be interesting because there is no Brad Riddell shoot option here, which he likes to mix in sometimes. He is a straight striker in this fight because if he tries to go to the ground with Renato Moicano, he's probably going to get tapped. Whereas Moicano will have that shoot option and may even immediately opt for it. We'll see. But until and unless that happens, we are going to have a hell of a matchup on the feet. Riddell should have the advantage technique-wise, but Moicano is willing to scrap. He will always have that takedown attempt in the back pocket, which could throw Riddell off, open him up a bit. I like the game of both of these guys a lot. I think they're both underrated fighters. It's tough to call. I could see like a weird scramble early on in the fight when they're dry where Moicano just catches something. But I'm going to say it doesn't happen. I'm going to say Riddell can stuff enough takedowns and that as the fight goes on, he starts to pour it on Moicano. Because Moicano, as much as he's a dangerous striker and a tough striker, he can be a bit one note at times. And a guy with the kickboxing experience and credentials of Riddell, I think the more minutes he has in the cage with him, the more openings he's going to find. So I think as it goes on, he pours it on a bit, pulls away on the cards, maybe drops that first round. I'll say 29-28, Brad Riddell.
I like it. I think this is going to be a you almost forgot fight for Brad Riddell. I mean, he ran up against the very, very talented Rafael Fiziev, who is sort of now in the upper echelon of lightweight. And then I agree with Omar. I think against Jalen Turner, he got caught. He got subbed very early on in round number 1. And I think that Riddell is going to remind a lot of people of how talented he is against another very talented opponent in Moicano. I'm going to say Riddell gets it done by unanimous decision. I'll agree with Mark and maybe say 29-28 and maybe one judge with a 30-27 or something like that. Moving right along, oh baby. In the lightweight division, we have Dan Hooker against Claudio Puelles. So Hooker, the hangman, 32-year-old out of New Zealand, 21-12 as a pro. He is a fighter's fighter, a fan favorite, and for good reason. He has fought a who's who at 155 pounds, as well as a few fights at 145 now. Of his 21 victories, 10 have come by way of knockout, 7 by submission. Only 4 wins by decision for Mr. Hooker. He is looking to get things back on track with the win after back-to-back losses against Arnold Allen and Islam Makhachev. And he has only won 1 of his last 5 fights against Nasrat Haqparast. The other 2 losses being against Michael Chandler and Dustin Poirier. So his losses are nothing to really, turn your nose up at. He will be standing across from Claudio Puelles, the Prince of Peru, the 26-year-old out of Peru, 12-2 as a pro, 2 knockouts, 7 submissions, 3 decisions. He's riding a 5-fight win streak coming into this weekend. He is 5-1 under the UFC banner. So, Mark, let me throw it over to you first this time. Give us your take of this return fight for Dan Hooker.
Yet another close one. Dan Hooker, the -150 favorite. Claudio Puelles, +125 as the dog. Dan Hooker has had a really rough road that has made it easy to think that he's lost it. And I don't think that he has. Now, Claudio Puelles does have some filthy jits. Absolutely scary jits. But Dan Hooker's not an easy man to take down when you're not Islam Makhachev. And Claudio Puelles isn't even a good wrestler. Like, he's more of the opportunistic grappling type. Like, yeah, it's frightening the way he can, snatch a leg out of nowhere or something of that nature, but I don't think that's happening to Dan Hooker. I really don't. I think he's too skilled. I think he's going to hurt Claudio Puelles. I think he can bring it to him, put it on him, take him out. I think we see a smart Dan Hooker here. Fight smart, keeps the fight where it needs to be, keeps his pace, just puts shots on Puelles and eventually gets him out of there. I'm going to say Dan Hooker, round 2 TKO.
Okay, Omar, give it to us.
I've been a big fan of Claudio Puelles since he stepped on the scene here in the UFC. I think that his potential is pretty damn high, and I also love the fact that he's out of Peru, kind of one of the first guys out of Peru to kind of work up his way through the scene. I don't know, man. I jumped on this boat a long time ago. I don't think right now is when I'm about to jump off of it. Dan Hooker is a tall order. Puelles shows a lot of issues when it comes to the submission game. There are a lot of questions that need to be answered as to where his striking ability is against especially somebody like Dan Hooker. What do those transitions look like? Can he mix up a ground game at some point against Dan Hooker? Like Mark said, he's not a guy to just he doesn't have a blast double that he can rely on or anything significant to get a guy down to the ground like that. especially not somebody as good as Dan Hooker. For me, this fight here, more than anything, is an opportunity for me to see where Puelles really stacks up against the higher echelon of the division, because I have had really high hopes for this kid. So I'm going to stick with him. It's a tall order. He might not be able to do it, but I'm going to go with Claudio Puelles by submission, round 3.
Interesting. I'm going to go against my better judgment. I'm going to say that Dan Hooker gets back in the win column. I just made this rule with Dominick Reyes. And I feel like I should be saying Dan Hooker's got to sort of show me that he could be more reliable before I pick him. But I love him. And I'm going to go with my man Dan Hooker. I think he's going to get it done. I think he's going to hand Claudio Puelles his second career TKO. And then we're going to be like, Dan Hooker is back, baby. I'll say he gets it done in round number 3. Okay, boys. It's time for the legend, Frankie Edgar, in a bantamweight bout against Chris Gutierrez. Frankie Edgar, the answer. 41 years old, out of Toms River, New Jersey. 24-10 with 1 contest even. 7 knockouts, 4 subs, 13 decisions. Coming off back-to-back losses, though, against Corey Sandhagen and Marlon Chito Vera back in November of 2021, so pretty much exactly 1 year ago. Standing across from Chris El Guapo Gutierrez, out of Texas, 31 years old, 18-4 as a pro with 2 draws, 8 knockouts. He's riding a 3-fight win streak coming into this Saturday night. Excuse me. Omar, let me toss it over to you. Give us your take. Gutierrez versus the legend, Frankie Edgar.
So this is a sad one. Frankie Edgar's retirement fight, when you look at his most recent losses and things like that, after basically having never been knocked out before in his career, he now has like 4 knockouts in his last 5 losses. It's sad to see, because I don't know how chinny he is at this point. Gutierrez has a few knockouts on his record, nothing crazy in recent memory, with the exception of the Dana fight. I want Frankie Edgar to win, obviously. I would hate for him to go out on a loss, especially having gotten knocked out again. You would hope that his technique, his wisdom, his experience comes into play, that he's able to gut out a decision victory against Gutierrez. But Frankie has shown that, it's possible at this point to turn him off. So I'm going to go with Frankie Edgar, though, to the end. Decision.
Mark, give it to us.
Surprisingly, to me at least, Chris Gutierrez is minus 220. Frankie Edgar plus 180. As for the pick, if you think I am not picking Frankie Edgar in his final fight in MSG in New York, you are bugging. I'm going with Frankie Edgar. I do think it's a good matchup for him. I think that the UFC maybe knows that, because Chris Gutierrez, is not really a KO threat. Obviously, Omar, his last fight he won by KO. He can knock guys out, but he's not that kind of power striker. And he can be taken down and out-wrestled. And for that reason, I'm kind of surprised that Frankie's as much of an underdog as he is, because Chris Gutierrez is really good. Don't get me wrong. This is a big jump for him, first of all. A big jump. But the dude throws nasty leg kicks that are probably going to be slamming into Frankie's legs all night. He's going to try to replicate what his teammate Jonathan Martinez just did to another vet in Cub Swanson. But I don't know. I don't see it. I think Frankie can impose his will on Gutierrez in the wrestling, and that we get a vintage Frankie performance. I guess it's possible that Frankie's chin is just gone, and we're going to see some really sad moment where he gets clipped here and we're like, oh my God, that put him out. I really hope that's not the case. And we've seen him deal with leg kicks before. He dealt with it from Pedro Munoz. He did all right with it. I think he can do it here. I'm going to say we get a vintage Frankie win, out wrestles Gutierrez. And even if I didn't truly see that, I would still be picking it because you picked Frankie Edgar in his final fight in MSG. That's the rules. Frankie Edgar, UD.
Sure, Mark. I'll pick Frankie Edgar by UD in his final fight. I don't have a great feeling about it. I don't want him to have a loss against a guy at this point, as low as Chris Gutierrez. I don't have a great feeling about it. I mean, he's only won one fight of his last 5. He's only won 2 fights of his last 7. He's still, in the midst of that, has wins over Pedro Munoz and Cub Swanson and Yair Rodriguez. But he also has some bad losses, man. And he's also 41 years old. And as we've alluded to earlier on this episode, while late 30s and creeping up into your 40s is just fine at the heavier weight classes, at the lower weight classes like bantamweight, man, that is ancient.
Yeah.
This is a weight class for young, speedy, strong guys. And I'm worried for Frankie that he's going to really go down, or rather go out, on a sour note, on a low note. But I'll go with Frankie. I'm going to say that in front of the hometown crowd at MSG, he's going to really go out on his shield, and he would have to be knocked out in order to, get him out of there. So, all right, let's move on.
I want people to know this is one of those moments where we're all super biased because we love Frankie. If this was fucking Frankie Edgar in his last fight in MSG against Islam Makhachev, we would all be explaining to you assholes that Islam Makhachev is an animal and he probably will beat the shit out of Frankie. And yet we would all still be taking Frankie Edgar to win. I want you to understand this is how this podcast works. Just
I don't think I'm that crazy, but I'm
that crazy.
Right.
Just want to let you know.
We're not journalists, folks. We're not held to a standard of objectivity. Okay.
0.
Anyway, we're not going to go back into that rabbit hole. Okay. Man, oh, man. This has got fight of the night written all over it in the lightweight division.
Oh, God.
Oh,
what a matchup. What a matchup. I'm going to take a sip of bourbon for this one.
Yes.
With a little recency bias, this has fight of the year written all over it. You kidding me?
Okay, boys. Dustin Poirier taking on Michael Chandler. So we have Dustin the Diamond, of course, famously out of Louisiana, 33 years old, 28-7 as a pro with 1 no contest. Coming off of a loss in the title bout against Charles Oliveira, December of last year. Dustin's fought everybody. Conor, Hooker, Max Holloway, Alvarez, Gaethje, Khabib. Chandler, a newer entrant into the UFC, long tenure at Bellator. Iron Michael from Missouri, 36 years old. 23-7 as a pro, so very similar records. 11 knockouts to his name, 7 subs, only 5 fights went to a decision that were in favor of Michael Chandler. Poirier, similar, 14 knockouts, 7 subs, 7 decisions. Chandler coming off of that incredible front kick KO over Tony Ferguson. Omar, let me toss it over to you. What's your take, man? This is a tough fight to pick for me.
It's a very tough fight. It's a very tough fight to pick. It also might be one of the most exciting fights that we're going to get to see maybe ever. It's got to be up there. At least it has the makings to be.
At least I'm right. At least on paper.
Yeah. I mean, Dustin Poirier is a savage. His boxing is, I don't know, insert amazing or adjective here. His boxing is fantastic. His range management is fantastic. His takedowns are great when he needs to have them. His ground control is fantastic. I mean, the man is elite. right? He got run over by Charles Oliveira just a smidge in that second round, or third round, excuse me. Khabib Nurmagomedov kind of sunned him a little bit. But if you look at his record, the man wins. He is a winner. It's very hard to pick against somebody with that kind of consistency, and especially understanding how those losses came about. He's losing to the champions. And Michael Chandler, as good as he is, as difficult as he is, at this particular point in his career, he's not a champion. He is a gladiator. He is the man who comes into the center of the octagon, looks at everybody and says, I am here to entertain you. And that could mean him front kicking Tony Ferguson in the face, or that could mean him getting into a barn brawl with Justin Gaethje and eventually losing. I have more confidence in Dustin Poirier to win the fight. I think that it'll be an exciting, brawling fight, but I think at the end of the day, Dustin Poirier, I think, has more of an understanding of how to do that as well as how to win. I also think that as many openings as there will be with them going back and forth, I just think Dustin's boxing is just a bit tighter than Chandler's is. I'm going to go Dustin Poirier by KO round 2.
All right, Mark, lay it on us, man. I'm very interested to see how tight or how wide these odds are. I'm guessing Poirier is the favorite, but I'm interested to see these odds.
Yeah, I feel like I looked not that long ago and they were tighter. So I don't know if money's been coming in on Poirier. He is minus 225. Michael Chandler is plus 180.
It's about right, actually. That's what I figured.
Yeah. So I may talk for a minute here. I freaking love this fight. It's incredible.
Do it.
I think Michael Chandler is incredible. I think he is one of the most interesting challenges in the lightweight division for Islam Makhachev, simply due to the package that he brings of the speed, the athleticism, the power, the wrestling that he does possess, the scramble ability. I think he's interesting. If you got to find someone who could be a challenge to Islam, I think Chandler might be more of one than Poirier is. I don't think he's beating Dustin Poirier. I don't know what it is. I can't picture it. I feel torn on the fight, but when I force myself to envision it, I can't see Chandler doing it. I don't think it's the right matchup for him. His technique is not where Dustin's is on the feet. They're going to be exchanging on the feet. Chandler's going to get hit more than Dustin is, I imagine. If Chandler tries to make it a dog fight, I lean Poirier. The man is a dog, just like Gaethje. Like, dog fights are where they live. If it's not a dog fight, I think Poirier is probably going to be using the low kick as a weapon and picking away with that. I think Chandler's stance has that front leg out there to be kicked. And I just think that as explosive as Chandler is at covering space, that Poirier is so good at taking angles and at stepping through his punches to make you step backwards that he can get Chandler backed up toward the cage. And we know that Dustin will just kind of trap you there once he has you backed up and start unleashing with the variety that he has. And I don't think Chandler's as good in that type of spot as he is out in the open, where he can use that fast twitch ability that he has. Now, in the open, Chandler's electric. He's so fast and so powerful that it can be overwhelming. So the possibility of Poirier being caught early in this fight definitely exists. I do think Dustin needs to come out a bit careful. But I just think Dustin's the more skilled striker, and I think that's going to be the story. What Chandler should really do here is mix in some wrestling. I really think him introducing that blend could change the whole fight and could open Dustin up a bit more defensively, but it seems like Chandler has kind of left the wrestling behind a bit these days. So I'm not sure we're going to see much of it. I wish this thing was 5 rounds. I wish it so badly. I think that would bring even more angles into this fight, but either way, I'm going to go Dustin Poirier. I could see it going the whole 15, of course, but I'm going to see Dustin gets him. I'm going to say Dustin gets him. I can't speak. In a late barrage. Dustin Poirier, round 3, TKO.
Yeah, it's interesting. I heard a quote from Beneil Dariush about this fight, and I really agree with him. I think he says something like that Chandler could be better, and Chandler could beat Poirier. But Chandler seems to be committed to this idea of, like you said, Mark, of really committing to just being this gladiator in this later stage of his career and just trying to be as entertaining as possible in a way that's kind of...
gladiator line. It's a good line.
Yeah, and in a way that's kind of like strategic on his part. It seems like he's strategizing in trying to make himself the most entertaining and most marketable fighter on the whole roster. And he is, man. Who doesn't want to tune in and watch Michael Chandler? Come on.
Hell yeah.
Dude's probably making way more money now than he was making at Bellator, too.
Sure,
I
possibly.
mean, they seem to love his ass over there.
Oh, yeah, they do.
So, that being said, yeah, I do think that Poirier is better just about everywhere, just about. The thing that I love about Poirier, and I've been a Poirier guy since his featherweight days, man. Since he came up, I was like, this is my guy right here. And, this is documented on this show, my love for this man. But truly, to see where he's evolved to at this point of his career, Poirier, he wears different hats as a fighter. He is both very technical and has very good boxing and striking technique, but he also, at the same time, he's like, if I need to be a dog, I can be a dog, and I can be a fucking warrior, and I can gut it out pretty much against anybody. I mean, looking down his list here of names that he has taken, if it is a stand-up fight, Poirier finds a way to win that fight, whether it's with technique or whether it's a war. The only guys who have bested him as of late are Oliveira and Khabib, both of whom who have done that with grappling.
Yep.
Dude,
and Chandler's not going to
honestly, man, the worst part, too, about both of those fights, the Oliveira and the Khabib fight, you could see Poirier overthinking both of those fights. Both, he's in the cage, so thinking about the takedowns and the ground game,
tough puzzle to solve,
what he has to do to stop it or to avoid certain things. Like, he had made a conscious decision to give up an entire round just because he had got on the ground with Khabib and he didn't want to do let anything go or potentially get caught in something. Like, those things were, especially if he feels like somebody else does something significantly better than him, he tends to overthink it, and he gets I think he screws himself there. I don't think we have that issue with Chandler. I don't see his wrestling being, levels above Chandler at this point. Above Poirier.
Yeah.
Chandler,
so I just to put a bow on this, I see this fight against Chandler going the way that Poirier's fight against Alvarez went. I think he's going to kind of slowly pour it on him, and damage is going to accumulate. And I agree with Mark. I have the same pick. I think Poirier is going to get a TKO in round number 3. It'd be interesting if this was a longer fight. Maybe. I don't know. But yeah, I'm going to go in round 3 TKO for my guy, Dustin the Diamond Poirier. But I'll say this too. Chandler is so explosive and athletic. I do think he's a live dog. Like, if Chandler catches Poirier and clips him, I won't be like, oh my God, that's so shocking.
Yeah, I really think Dustin's got to be careful for a few minutes of that fight.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It should be
right,
5
boys.
rounds, though. Seems crazy to me that they don't make these fights 5 rounds.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's the co-main event.
Garbage.
In the co-main event, we do have a 5-round title bout in the women's strawweight division. Carla, the Cookie Monster Esparza, is defending her women's strawweight strap against Zhang Weili. Here we go. Esparza, 2-time now title holder, 35-year-old out of California. She's riding a 6-fight win streak, including her title win, reclaiming her title over Thug Rose Namajunas back in May of this year. She's 19-6 as a pro, with 11 decisions on her record. Weili Zhang, Magnum. I never knew Magnum was her nickname. Out of China, 33 years old, 22-3 as a pro with 11 knockouts and 7 submissions. What a savage. Coming off of a knockout victory over Joanna Jędrzejczyk back in June of this year. Mark, let's start with you this time. Give us your take on how Zhang is going to kill Esparza. Excuse me. Whoa. Excuse me.
Weili is the favorite. She is minus 380. Carla is plus 280. Just real quick, I got to say, the fact that Carla's a 2-time champion is pretty damn impressive because if you went through the list of 2-time champions, she would undoubtedly be the outlier of like, wow, can't believe that person got the belt twice.
Yeah.
And she had, so
Yeah.
good for her. With that said, I don't want it to sound as if I am disrespecting Carla Esparza because I absolutely do respect her skills and respect the puzzle that she makes herself for these strawweights. But there is no way on earth that I'm not picking Weili here. She is a freak, a literal freak. I mean, did you guys see the video of her picking up Francis Ngannou the other day?
Yes.
Who is not
in the hell was
who is
that?
not on weight. This man is not. This is not. If you watch that
300
video,
pounds, probably.
Yeah.
yeah, he's not 265 or whatever you see him weighing in
He's a
at.
child.
He's a giant.
Yeah,
Like
I think he said he was 295 in that video is what he said.
craziness.
Jesus Christ.
Wow. But yeah, she looks better and better every single time we see her. Her training videos these days look legitimately insane. Her hand speed is silliness. She's strong. She's an athlete. Her wrestling is much improved since training with Henry Cejudo. It looks like it's leveling up each fight. And as good as Carla Esparza is and as smart as her game plans can be, I just think this is too big of an ask. I don't think she can do this. I think Weili takes her belt back within the first 10 minutes of this fight. Could be the first 2, but yeah, I think it's a performance that may border on scary. I'm going Weili and New, round 2 TKO.
Sure. Omar.
I want to believe in Carla Esparza more than I do. Another person that seems like super nice. Like I watch her on all these embeddeds. I watch all these videos of her and shit, and she seems like such a cool, laid back person, very enjoyable.
Yeah, of course.
And very unassuming, right? Like when you look at her, if you saw her from across the room, you wouldn't be like totally UFC champion right there. Very unassuming woman. And if you look at her record, like she's solid, man. Like she's got wins under her belt against real people. She's done real work in the division. And for the life of me, I can't believe in her the way I want to. I just think her performances always leave a little something more to be desired. And I just feel like every time I watch her fight, even when she wins, I keep thinking to myself, there's somebody who can take real advantage of this girl and her game. And we're just waiting to see who that is. And I think Weili might be that person. Weili is, like Mark said, kind of a freak of nature, man. That woman, and she's been physically strong in the past. This is not like a new attribute for Weili Zhang. She is strong as shit, but she's even stronger now, apparently. And if you add that in with the training she's been doing with Henry Cejudo, taking those losses on the chin properly, knowing that she's got holes that she needs to plug up and level up. I frankly, her last performance against Joanna and Jacek was fantastic. I don't take away too much from it just because Joanna was kind of 1 foot out the door as it was. But at the same time, man, Weili looked good. And I don't think she's going to look worse in this fight. If anything, I think she's going to look better. I think Esparza's got a real test on her hands. The one thing I will say about Esparza is people have been talking shit about her for years. They have been counting her out for years. They have been saying for years how she's going to lose the belt for Invicta. She's going to lose the belt in the UFC. They've been saying it for years. And the girl generally shuts people up. I think the only time that she really got kind of outclassed was back in the day against Joanna and Jacek when they first fought. And we were just like, who the fuck? Like, what is going on here? And I think after that, maybe Tatiana Suarez also sunned her a little bit, if I remember right. Yeah.
Such a shame, that girl. She's unbelievable.
Tatiana Suarez is also like 3 feet taller than Carlos. But like Tatiana Suarez is gigantic for the division. That's a different story for a different time. But all of that being said, Carla Esparza has had the deck against her entire career and has seemingly pulled through. So if she pulls through with this one, I wouldn't necessarily be surprised. But everything in me tells me Weili Zhang is about to put the beatdown of the beatdowns on Carla Esparza. So I'm going to go with that. I'm going to go with TKO round 4.
Well, biggest surprise of the evening. We are unanimous on this one. I mean, dude, you're right, Omar. Like, Esparza deserves some props, man. I mean, I've never been super high on her skill set. I think a lot of people have never been super high on her skill set. She's a wrestling base. She's never had super impressive striking. But she rattles off wins, man. She's on a 6-fight win streak over, let's see, Virna Jandiroba, Alexa Grasso, Michelle Waterson, Marina Rodriguez, Zhao Nanyan, and Rose Namajunas. Like, those are all legit names. A 6-fight win streak, man. Now, it should be noted, 3 of those are split decisions, and another one of those is a majority decision. So, not one of them is only one of them is a TKO finish over Zhao Nanyan. So a lot of those, more than half of those, were controversial decisions.
And that last fight, if you remember that Rose fight, that I think has officially gone down as the worst fight in UFC history. And we've had some bad ones. Derek Lewis and Ngannou, or Derek Lewis Gane, and we've had some other ones.
No, Derek
this
Lewis
one,
and Ngannou, you were right. So, yeah.
Was it in Ngannou? It wasn't Gane? Oh, okay. But yeah, this one, that Rose Namajunas, Carla Esparza one, I think absolutely takes the cake as one of the worst fucking things I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So I think that Zhang is just on another level. And we're going to see a Zhang finish, and I'll say round 3. Mid-fight. She gets it done.
I'm not even an anti-Esparza person. Like, I actually picked her in a lot of those fights in that run. I think she gets underrated because she matches up well with a lot of people who can't stop her. I can't see it here. I'll be stunned.
Totally. Yeah, agreed. Yeah. All right, boys, it is getting later and later, and we have arrived to the main event of the evening. UFC 281, middleweight title bout between Israel Adesanya and Alex Pereira. So first, a little toast to this one. This is an exciting fight, man. I made sure to save some of this Bardstown bourbon. I wanted to drink it so fast. Oh, my God. This is a good one worth waiting for. So we have Israel, the last style better, Adesanya, putting his middleweight strap on the line. A 33-year-old out of Nigeria. Was 23-1 as a pro with 15 knockouts, 8 decisions. Riding a 3-fight win streak coming into this weekend. The only loss of his career was when he moved up to challenge for the light heavyweight title against Jan Blachowicz and lost in a decision. So he has never been finished in MMA, which has importance with this matchup, of course. So he's undefeated at middleweight, and he's facing off against the only guy who has knocked him out in his fighting career, Alex Pereira, who knocked him out in kickboxing only in 2017. Pereira, the 35-year-old fighting out of Brazil. He is 6-1 as a professional MMA fighter with 5 knockouts and 1 decision. He is riding a 6-fight win streak. That's right. His only loss is his first pro MMA bout. He has gone undefeated since then. Most recently knocking out Sean Strickland back in July of this year. Here we go. Did I mention 5 of his 6 victories have come by way of knockout? Mark, let me throw it over to you. Give us your take, man. Let's talk about this super high-profile title bout between Adesanya and his nemesis, Pereira.
All right. This is another one that seems to have moved a bit of late, betting lines-wise. Seems like some money has come in on Izzy because I saw this closer earlier in the week. Now he is minus 210. Alex Pereira is plus 170. Yeah. Here we go. The build to this has been awesome. I'm loving the interviews. I haven't watched Countdown or Embedded yet, unfortunately. I wish I had. But there's some electricity between these guys. You can feel it. And this is certainly going to be a straight kickboxing match. Obviously, the technique is crazy high on both sides. But if we're comparing and contrasting, I guess it's going to be Izzy, who's a bit more of the smooth kickboxer, whereas Pereira is the man with the power. They both have power, of course, but Pereira's is just very silly. Even his jab is enormous. And he operates as the power striker. They play different kickboxing games. Izzy is there to touch and to flow, and Pereira is much more there to set up the kill shot. And his strikes come with a lot more of his body behind the strikes. They're definitely a different style. And Pereira may not be scared to exchange with Izzy here based on their history. And if that's the case, he may very well find openings, because it's been a long time since Izzy fought someone who was completely willing to exchange with him. And, that changes the effectiveness of the game that he's used to being able to play, if that's going to be the case. And not to mention the reach is going to be a factor here too, because for once, Izzy's not going to have that in his corner. The two are the exact same height, exact same reach. They're the same guy in a lot of ways. And if Robert Whittaker's out jabbing Izzy, which is going to happen with Pereira's reach and power, then, we could see some interesting exchanges in this fight. It's a big factor to consider. And Izzy's had a lot of performances in recent times. So there's really every reason to pick Alex Pereira here if you want to. But I'm building it up that way first because I'm going to choose to believe in Izzy. I'm going to choose to think that he has turned up enough for this fight to put on the best performance of his life. Just the interviews I've seen, the little moments I've seen, he seems very dialed in, very confident. I really think we're going to see a career-maker performance. I know that's bold with what he's been giving us lately, a lot of letdown-type performances. I think he's up for this. I think he's more motivated than ever to put on a masterclass in this fight. And I think having fought Pereira twice already, he kind of has a mind where he thinks he can go in there and not get hurt because he thinks he knows what Pereira is bringing enough. I think he's going to play his typical movement-based sniper game, and I think he's going to pick away, land a big one here and there, not get hit as often or at least as cleanly as Pereira thinks he will, and get Pereira kind of frustrated in there. And if it does go that way, I'm very curious to see what Pereira is looking like if he is frustrated by round 4 and round 5, see what his cardio is looking like as he has to deal with that. We haven't seen that from him. And we could even see Izzy mix in a takedown or two in a round that needs to be stolen on the cards, or if he needs to get himself out of a situation if he got backed up. Like, he's capable of that. So, and maybe Pereira's capable of defending it. He does train with Glover regularly, obviously, so we don't know how quickly he's leveled up. But it wouldn't shock me to see Izzy mix in one or two. So I think overall we see Izzy maybe take a big shot or two, but we know his chin and his heart, and I think he can eat him, and I think he can keep it moving. And I'm going to say he puts it on Pereira more or less. I'm going to say it's 49-46 Izzy in a huge win.
Wow. Okay. Omar, give it to us.
I personally think that Pereira is, or seemingly is, riding the laurels of that win a little too much. It seems to be the narrative, obviously. There's no way this kid's got a title shot 1 year after coming into the UFC. There's no way that would have happened had it not been for the history, obviously, had it not been for everything that had been going on prior to, to him coming into the UFC. So there's a lot of reasons why he's getting this title shot. And while there is obviously a reasoning behind picking Alex Pereira to win this fight, I just think Israel Adesanya is still on a different level. I'm of the mindset that the people that he fights have not forced him to fight at his full potential. There's a part of me that honestly feels like he doesn't put himself in danger against certain people because he doesn't feel like he has to, or because they don't force him to. Pereira, I don't think will give him that opportunity. I think Pereira will come forward and he will make Adesanya play with him. There will be a lot of countering, I would imagine, a lot of feints, a lot of setups between the two of them. I don't see this being throwing outside leg kicks for 5 rounds. And again, if that happens for 5 rounds, it's difficult for me not to blame Pereira for that as well. I'm not going to go down that route because we haven't gotten there, but there is some responsibility, I think, on Pereira to bring the fight just as much as there is to Adesanya as well. And I think both of these guys, with their history, Adesanya, I would imagine, wants that one back to some extent. It doesn't sound like he's been crying about this knockout for however long that happened. It does seem like Pereira seems like the guy that go around and be like, hey, you know that guy that knocked out Izzy? That was me. His kids kind of seem like dicks. I'm just going to put that out there real quick. His kids seemed a little asshole-ish. I don't know if you guys saw the video after Pereira knocked out Izzy.
Oh, yeah.
After Pereira knocked out Izzy, one of Pereira's sons goes into the cage right next to Izzy, pops himself in the head with a water bottle, and just sort of pretends to get knocked out, just like Izzy had just been knocked out prior to that. So they're young. They're still kids. I think they're like 12 now at this point. But they're kind of little assholes. So not thrilled about that there. And so they all seem to be really they all seem to be riding high on the fact that Pereira has knocked out Izzy all those years ago in kickboxing. And Izzy doesn't seem to really let it bother him as much. He 100% admits that it's a personal thing. You know, Pereira right now has got bragging rights. He's got all the reason to talk all the shit. But Izzy's ready. He seems like he's ready for it. And for me, I trust somebody more, and I think I've said this before, I trust somebody way more who's honest with themselves and who's upfront with the reality of the situation rather than somebody who likes to seemingly hide or make excuses as to why things were the way that they were. Israel said he knocked him out. He caught him. Did some good setups, caught him, and that was it. He's never taken anything away from that opportunity, from that fight. And I think this is the opportunity for him to just show how much better he's gotten over the years and that he's leaps and bounds above Pereira. I think Pereira is very good. I think he could definitely stay in the top 5 for a long time. I just don't think he's beating Izzy. So with all that said, I'm going to go with Izzy by unanimous decision. I also think he wins 4 rounds to 1.
Wow. Man, oh man. Yeah, it's been interesting to see how dialed in Adesanya has been this week. I feel like the last time we saw him this dialed in was against Costa, because it seems kind of personal between him and Costa for some reason.
Well, Costa was talking wild shit too.
Yeah. Remember when Costa brought that black belt with him to that stare down and like tried to hand it to Adesanya, and Adesanya like whipped it at him, and I was like, oh shit, he's pissed.
Yep.
Yeah.
This energy reminds me of that. But, man, I feel like if it's just going to be a stand-up fight, what's going to be different? I mean, these two guys have fought twice. Pereira has won both of them. And the last one, he knocked him out cold. So, that being said, I don't think it's that different in MMA. I want to take Adesanya, though. My God. I really do. Because I love him. I think he's a star. And I love him for the sport. I'll just be different. I'm going to say Pereira is going to... I'll say Pereira is going to win this fight by TKO. Wow, I hate that I'm saying this.
You seem very conflicted right now. I figured someone was taking Pereira here.
Yeah, I guess someone's got to, right? The funny thing is that Adesanya started fighting pro MMA alongside his kickboxing career. He started in MMA back in 2012, which is why he has 24 fights, whereas Pereira only started back in 2015, and it's only 7 fights. Much more of a trickle for him. But fuck it, I'll be different, and I'll go against my heart here, and I'll take Pereira by TKO. I'll say round 3. Oh, that's tough. I hope that doesn't
I
happen.
hate everything about that, Mike.